Hello everyone, it's Justin again. I'm here with another video. This time, tithing and New Testament offerings. As a baby Christian, when I was 19 years old, I the church I went to, as attending, they also taught the tithe, as many churches do, teach that Christians are to tithe 10% of their income to the church. And turns out the tithing 10% of your income to the church is not biblical under the New Testament. I'm going to explain what tithes were, as well as I'll address some of the arguments Christians use today as to why we're to try to propose why we should tithe in the New Testament, and debunk them by explaining some of these passages that they use. I'm going to be reading from my book, from Bible Verses for Born Again Believers, Volume 3, the finale, Chapter 16, I believe, Tithes and New Testament Offerings. Let's get into it. Now we get to a very important and relevant Bible topic. This study's primary focus will be to address the question, are New Testament Christians required to tithe? While many Christians understand that we don't do animal sacrifices anymore and are not under the Levitical laws concerning taboo foods like pork, still many Christians want to take this specific law of the Old Testament and place it as a yoke on the neck of New Testament believers. As you can probably tell by the verbiage, as you can probably tell from the verbiage that I just used, I do not believe Christians are required to tithe 10% of their income. Why do I believe tithing isn't for today? Consider the following facts. Tithing is never mentioned as money in Scripture, with the exception of being only turned into money temporarily, so as to transport it due to the journey being too far. Afterward, it was turned back into food. Second point, tithing was a custom for Levitical priests. On the account of they were not given land by Yah, additional tithes were for the poor and needy, as well as some was kept for the tither. Fact 3. We are no longer under Levitical priesthood, but under the priesthood of Melchizedek. Jesus is our high priest. Jesus came from the tribe of Judah. Point 4. A change of the priesthood necessitates a change in the law. And point 5, Christian giving is defined as however much we purpose in our hearts, we are encouraged to give cheerfully and abundantly. Christians who give 10% and think they are tithing are actually mistaken. If we were to tithe like they did in the Old Testament, then we would be tithed 10% twice a year, and yet another 10% every 3 years, averaging 23.3% a year. Some Christian teachers may say that tithing predates the Mosaic law, and therefore it transcends the law, and making a requirement for believers today. They will then probably give one or both the following examples. Abraham and Jacob. How did these men tithe, though? Abraham was only recorded as tithing once, time of the spoils. I guess I put one time there. It's just at one time. It's just once time. Spoils of war. This is not how New Testament believers are told to tithe. New Testament believers are encouraged to tithe every week, not once from the spoils of war. That part, I just want to that statement I just added just now. I wasn't reading from the book, but anyway, let me reread the last sentence I was reading. They will then probably give one or both the following examples. Abraham and Jacob. How did these men tithe, though? Abraham was only recorded as tithing once time of the spoils of war. This is not how New Testament believers are told to tithe. The second one was Jacob, but his tithe is a bit different than the Levitical tithe. Jacob's tithe was the result of a vow, which Christians are forbidden to do, and conditional on whether or not God would bless him. The Levitical tithe was not optional. Furthermore, Jacob's tenth was a free will thing that he chose to do. As I said before, elsewhere in the book in this book, Christians are not under the Old Testament rules and regulations. Only the ones that are restated in the New Testament are we obligated to abide by. Commands such as thou shalt not kill, steal, and commit adultery are for Christians today, but tithing is not required. This isn't to say that we shouldn't give to Christian ministers. Indeed, the scriptures tell us in multiple ways and places to give to those in ministry. However, this isn't a set percentage of our income. We should give as we feel led by the Lord to do so. We also are required to love our neighbor as ourselves. Therefore, if we do have plenty of food and refuse to share with those in need who come to us, how can we claim to be Christians? James 2:5-17, 1 John 3:17. So, excuse me. Give me 1 minute, guys. As I was reading, I forgot to mention there was a sentence in here where it says we should give as we feel led by the Lord to do so. I misspelled that. It says fell, F-E-L-L. It should be F-E-E-L. That's the second mistake I have. I might try to get back and correct those in a future date. Edit those sometime in the future. What I'm going to do now is read some Bible verses pertaining to this issue on tithing and relevant Bible topics. And I might pause to give my statements on these verses. There's the passage in Genesis 14:18-20 regarding Abraham and Melchizedek. Genesis 4:18-20. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God, and he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand, and he gave him tithes of all. Genesis 28:20. Let's see here, 28:20 through 22. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and will keep me in it this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God, and this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Leviticus 27:30-33. And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord. So notice how it's not saying money; it's talking about the seed of the land or fruit of the tree. I just want to make that statement there. Let's go back to the scriptures. And if a man will at all redeem all of his tithes, he shall add thereunto a fifth part thereof. And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the tenth shall be holy unto the Lord. He shall not search whether it be good or bad, neither shall he change it. And if he change it at all, then both it and the change thereof shall be holy, it shall not be redeemed. So they're talking about tithe being fruit, seed, and herd, cattle. So Numbers 18:21. And let's see here. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all a tenth in Israel for an inheritance, for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of congregation. So that was when God's house in the Old Testament was a tabernacle, and the Levites were serving the tabernacle. They would get a tenth of Israel. God gave the tenth of Israel to the Levites. So it didn't say to your pastor in the New Testament. Now our body is the temple of God. So that's another difference. Numbers 18:24. But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer and heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said to them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. Numbers 18:25. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, and Numbers 18:26. Thus speaketh to the Levites, and said unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up an heave offering of it for the Lord, even a tenth part of the tithe. Deuteronomy 14:22-29. Thou shalt truly tithe all thy increase of thy seed that the field bringeth forth year by year. And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there, to tithe thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the firsting of thy herds, and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. And if the way be too long for thee, so that thou art not able to carry it, or if the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there, when the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, then shalt thou turn it into money, and bind up the money in thine hand, and shalt go into the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, and thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth after, for oxen, or for sheep, or for wine, or for strong drink, or for whatsoever thy soul desireth, and thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and shalt rejoice thou and thine household. So we see this is the singular passage in the Bible that talks about tithing being money, and it was basically a temporary thing used so they could transport the tithe to the Lord's house, to the place where God says his name there. And then when they got there, they would redeem that, use that money for the food, for stuff, for oil. I think they said for, let's see here. It didn't say oil there. It didn't say oil, but it said oxen, sheep, wine, or for strong drink, or for whatsoever thy soul desireth. So, anyway, you probably could use redeem for oil if you wanted to, but that's my assumption there. But right there, we showed that the tithing was, if we went back to up a few verses, it was talking about being tithed thy corn, thy wine, and then the oil. So right there, that's where we're talking about tithe being oil as well. First thing that I heard, thy flocks. So I just want to keep hammering that point. Tithing wasn't money; it was livestock and seed, food, and it was brought by the Israelites to the place where God would say His name. Let's see here. Deuteronomy 14:27 and 28 and 29. And the Levite that is within thy gate, thou shalt not forsake him, for he hath no part nor inheritance with thee. At the end of 3 years thou shalt bring forth all the tithe of thine increase the same year, and shalt lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite, because he hath no part nor inheritance with thee, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, which are within thy gates, shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands which thou doest. So right there, it talks about give the tithes to the Levite because they had no part nor inheritance with the Israelites. Also, give it to the stranger, fatherless, and widow. And it was talking about at the end of 3 years there. It was talking about the end of 3 years, and then laying it up, bring forth all the tithe, and then mentioned the stranger, fatherless, and widow. So that was probably, I'm guessing that's the poor tithes for the poor folk too. So it was given to the needy, poor and needy. Malachi 3:8 through 11. I'm going to go ahead for a second time. Skip that. You guys probably heard that so many times. But it's basically Matthew 3:8 through 11 basically is what pastors will use to try to justify. That's like this Old Testament verse and try to use it to say, oh, you're robbing God if you don't tithe. I ain't going to quote the whole verse. I ain't going to basically quote it, but if you go Matthew 3:8 through 11, that's the passage they often cite to try to justify, give me your tithe. Pastors are like, give me your tithe, or you don't want to rob God, you know. So then we'll go ahead and go to Matthew 23:23. This is Jesus talking. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe and mint of mint. For ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye have done. These ought ye have to done. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. And then Luke 11:42. But woe unto you, Pharisees, for ye tithe mint and rue, and all manner of herbs, and pass over judgment and the love of God. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. Okay, so right here is a supposed pastors might use this verse to say, oh look, Jesus is commanding to tithe under the New Testament. Not so fast. When Jesus was saying this, he has not went to the cross to die for our sins. This time frame is still technically under the Old Testament. So since the Israelites were still under the Old Testament, Jesus would not tell them to disobey the law of Moses at that time. He wouldn't tell you to disobey the law. So he was telling them, yes, keep obeying the law, do what keep the commandments of God. He wouldn't contradict it. But keep in mind, this is before the cross. This isn't binding on our New Testament believers. Acts 21:25. Okay, this ain't specifically talking about tithing, but it would have been a great place to mention tithing if New Testament believers were supposed to tithe. Acts 21:25. As touching the Gentiles which believe, that's us, we have written and conclude that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangled, and from fornication. All right, so there's an opportunity they could have made to say, hey, Christians are supposed to tithe, but they didn't put it in there, so... But there's other places, there's other passages I want to talk about here in the New Testament. Romans 15:27. It hath pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things. All right, so that's one passage on many. Which, though I'm against Christian tithing, I'm not against Christian giving. We as Christians have an obligation. We should, when we feel led by the Lord, or when we feel we should help the poor. We should still help the poor and needy, and help people who minister the gospel. Support Christian missionaries. People who are out there preaching and teaching. We should give them, if we have abundance, we have wealth. We should give them our wealth, or as the Lord calls us to give them. So I'm not against that. Don't think because I'm not against giving to those in need and for the Christian ministers. Greed is a sin. We should not be greedy with our resources. We should be charitable. 1 Corinthians 9:11 through 13, through 14. If we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things? If others would be partakers of this power over you, are not we rather? Nevertheless, we have not used this power, but suffer all things, lest we should hinder the gospel of Christ. Do you not know that they which minister about the holy things live of the things of the temple, and they which nope, and they which wait at the altar are partakers with the altar? Even so hath the Lord ordained that they which preach the gospel should live of the gospel. Okay, so we went back up to 1 Corinthians 9:11. It said, "If we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things?" But that's another passage. So, might be used to justify giving to New Testament preachers, those that sow the word and are out there doing ministry work. Give to those people. Let's see, 2 Corinthians 9:7. Every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. If you see me shake my head or pausing for a moment and muttering something, it's probably me praying. If I have intrusive thoughts, just let you know. Sometimes I struggle with intrusive thoughts sometimes, so it can be tough to just concentrate and focus. Here's another passage. Galatians 6:6 is used to support Christian giving to ministers. Let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things. So there's another passage for that. Now, Hebrews 7:12 and 8:13. For the priesthood being changed, there is made of a necessity a change also of the law. That's Hebrews 7:12 and Hebrews 8:13. And that he saith, a new covenant, he hath made the first old, now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So we're under the new covenant. We're under the New Testament as Christians. Hebrews 9:10. Which stood only in meats and drinks and diverse washings and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of the Reformation. That's another passage you could talk about when referring to the customs of the Old Testament. So I would put tithing under one of the customs of the Old Testament when the Levites were in charge of the priesthood, and when Israelites were giving them the flocks and the food so they can minister about the tabernacle under the Old Testament. Our New Testament, we are supposed to help those in the church, help our brethren, love our brethren, help the poor and needy, but it's not a set percentage. It's however much God lays on your heart, however much you purpose in your heart. All right, thanks for watching my YouTube or TikTok video. If you feel free to get a copy of my book, Bible Verses for Born Again Believers, Volume 3. All right. Au revoir.